This episode is brought to you by Flex Dealer. Hey, auto industry. In this episode of the Dealer Playbook, I'm joined by my pal, Elena Ciccotelli, the founder of the EVs for Everyone podcast, a friend of the Dealer Playbook. And we're going to take a deep dive into sometimes controversial topics surrounding EVs. We're going to talk about EVs and, most importantly, what you should be thinking about in your dealership around the EV narrative. Elena, thanks so much for joining me on the Dealer Playbook.
Michael Cirillo, better known, aka MC. I am so honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
Okay. So, I mean, it is sometimes a controversial topic. People get into regulations and, oh, wait, there's no EV chargers on Capitol Hill. And why are they forcing this? And now some in the country, dare I add to the controversy, might say that daddy's coming home on the 20th of January. And what's that going to mean for the regulation of EVs? So I want to kind of pick your brain on all of these topics. But first and foremost, why and how EVs for you?
That is a great question, and it is a long and sordid tale, Michael. Back when I worked at Lyft, which was a long time ago, I ran their automotive partnerships department. And what I found there was just a whole host of people that were hungry for more information on EVs. So if you can remember back to the era, I would say the pre-COVID era, we had, a lot of dealers were just like, this is, we're doing our thing, this and that. And then now we've come into this whole electric vehicle equation, and it's like, whoa. Let's just, as Biden had said, let's tap the brake a little bit. Let's see what we need to really be doing. And some people argue, did we put the cart before the horse? Did we get too far ahead of ourselves? But I think for me, what was really interesting about just this whole new segment, this new propulsion system that's really kind of hitting the market, is that there are these two huge legacy industries: a utility and automotive, which historically, let's be real, there's a lot of red tape in working with both of these very, very large, very legacy industries. And so I'm like, man, this is cool. And when you get that feeling where you're like, this is pivotal. This is part of history. I know you talk about AI a lot on the show, and it has the feeling of, ooh, we're in the beginning of the internet. This is day one of the internet. And so That really also kind of drew me in of, okay, I want to learn. I want to be a student of figuring out this big puzzle, but then I also want to bring a human side to the EV ecosystem, because we can get caught up in jargon. We can get caught up in acronyms and technicalities. Oh, we've got the solid state battery and we've got the lithium. No, speak to me like a human. And so that's where my whole background, aside from automotive, is very performance driven. I went to school for dance in Manhattan. Like, I have this background that is not your normal automotive background. And so I feel comfortable doing podcasting. I feel comfortable being on stage. And so having that in my toolkit. And also, before we hit record on this episode, you and I are both people, if you want to say. That all kind of coming together was the perfect storm, if you will, of what is now the EVs for Everyone podcast.
But just a little, slides a little, and I used to dance in Manhattan. When I speak and I get off stage, there's inevitably going to be a handful of people that go, how do you even do it? And then I meet individuals like you who Yeah, you can speak on stage, but then there's something so much more vulnerable about dancing in front of people.
It's yes.
So that's cool.
So that's cool. Listen, okay. So before I got into automotive, I was on the track of like being in a dance company in New York. I was auditioning for Broadway. I actually did dance at the Pennsylvania Ballet for a while. I was in it like I thought that was going to be my career path. And then we don't have to get into the story, but if we're going to go down this rabbit hole, we can. I got injured really badly, and I then turned to physical therapy and personal training. And then I was like, this business is so lame. Like I can do it so much better. And then I got into entrepreneurship and then I was like, then I had my own company and then I sold it. So like EVs for Everyone podcast is not my first iteration into entrepreneurship. I'm very good at bootstrapping. I can operate on a shoestring, if you will. So I have that entrepreneurial drive. And, you know, while I worked in corporate, there was always that, you know what it is. It was that itch. You're like, oh, corporate is nice. It's comfortable. I get my paycheck every 2 weeks and the niceties. And I'm like, I'm so bored. It's like I can't, like there was anyway. So I was always constantly experimenting with the podcast medium, and like you're like the godfather of automotive podcasts because
Well, shucks.
hey, no, you got like 600 episodes here. So
you said godfather or grandfather?
I said the godfather, which is very different. Very, very different. So I think, you know, when you get those repetitions, and anyway, I know we got to talk about EVs. So we went a detour.
Well, this shapes a narrative that I kind of want to talk to you about. We can do it now. We can do it in a bit. But this, you know, when we were first starting this show, this term automotivepreneur kind of came out of an episode. I don't know what episode it was, but we started saying automotivepreneur a lot, getting a sense of your entrepreneurial journey and how even if you work at a company, let's say you're a retail dealer, you work for a dealership, you're a salesperson, you're whatever, this is the best place to cut your teeth as an entrepreneur because you can show up every day, run it like your own business with your own drive, determination, et cetera, in somebody else's building that they pay for, with somebody else's inventory that they pay for. Like you just have to show up. And I think there's an element here when it comes to the EV narrative. You said earlier, there's jargon, there's acronyms, there's all these things that we get hyped up on, perhaps are taking our focus away from what we should actually be focusing on, which is the opportunity around EV. So maybe let's shift in that direction, knowing now that you're an entrepreneur, that you're not afraid to dance in front of people, which is so crazy, that you're able to operate on a shoestring, which to me as an entrepreneur says, you know how to get creative. What should dealers who are still trying to make sense of this EV thing be thinking about? What's the opportunity for them? Let's say this year, maybe the next 6 months, maybe the next 12 months.
Well, I'm going to hit you with some like hardcore stats because I like to start from a basis of fact. So I recently I did an episode with Experian Automotive. They're also a good friend of the show, and they came out with their quarterly trend report. So their quarterly trend report was for Q3 2024, and so EVs are now 4.2 million vehicles in operation. Okay, and I thought this was interesting because there are a lot of different narratives around this. Approximately 78% of EV owners replace their vehicles or are choosing to replace them with another EV. There was a McKinsey study that came out earlier in 2024 that said, no, they're not choosing to go back to an EV. Experian went back, ran the numbers, found 78%. So my thing is, if you're comfortable with giving up a percentage of your business to another dealer, then of your EV business to another
Right.
dealer, like just be real with it and say, okay, I'm out. It's
Right.
like, you either are you in or you're out. What is that quote from? There's a movie quote there. I can't remember it, but you can't be halfway with electric vehicles, because you know what? People will smell that BS from a mile away. You talked about, again, at length with Bob Welby from Infinity about the guest experience and about hospitality and the genius idea of having that ambassador go to that guest's place of work, their home, get them acquainted with the car. Very Knight Rider, like, let me be the kit to your EV. So I need to be able to take those theories, and again, the human side. What is the human side of, like, where am I charging this thing? Where am I getting my level 2 charging? Like, let's figure all of that out. And by the way, there are a lot of really successful dealers who are doing this well. They've been on the show, and I
Yeah.
believe they've been on your show too. Um, it it is absolutely possible. And again, people whine and complain, oh, it's such a small segment of the market and this and that. But again, my entrepreneurial brain turns on. It's like, I don't want to give up that segment of the market to somebody else.
Yeah. Well, I think about generational impact as well. I mean, it's human nature. We don't understand things at first. We have to poke and prod and examine. I mean, here's an example that hopefully most listening would understand. This is how I internalize it. Here you have Shaquille O'Neal, could get sponsored by any brand anywhere, makes the decision, no, I'm not going to go with Reebok. I'm not going to go with Nike. I care deeply about people's affordability. And so I'm going to go with Walmart. I'm going to put a Shaq shoe in Walmart that's affordable. And all of a sudden, when you contrast that to Nike or whatever, and the executives there are probably like, what a dumb decision. A, it's made him boatloads of cash. But B, when you have, say, our generation with kids who appreciate affordability, who are buying Shaq shoes at Walmart for their kids, and those kids come up on Shaq shoes, probably their affinity for Shaq shoes from Walmart will pass on to their kids at a larger or more, whatever you want to call it, number, deeper penetration. And we're 2 or 3 generations out from Shaq being the new Nike and having something that will far outlive him. And that's kind of how I think about the Elons, the BYDs, all of these companies that are pushing it in. It's not about forcing a narrative. It's like, we're the first generation that gets to try it out.
Exactly. And I am remembering a thread or a conversation we had on LinkedIn where it's like, my niece is going to be the first generation to learn how to drive on an EV. That was a conversation we had, right?
Yep.
Yes, it was. And number one, that's mind blowing and makes me feel old, and my geriatric millennial bones like start to creak a little bit. But at the same time, you're right. It's, again, going back to the point of, like, we're in the midst of creating this history. Oh, by the way, we're just disrupting all of transportation and personal mobility. No big thing. Let's just like have that as a footnote. No, it's a huge deal. Like, okay, so another example, I just did an episode with Michael Dunn, who is like the foremost authority on China and automotive and what's going on there. He is so knowledgeable. Every time I talk to him, it just blows my mind. So I did a wrap up with him about CES. CES, Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas, biggest tech show in the world. And we were talking about some of the impressions that he had from some of the different OEMs. Honda made some announcements. Of course, we had the Afeela, which we we really like bombed the Afilo. Like we had no love lost there on the Afilo there. But then we're also talking about, what BYD was showing off, and what are some of the advancements that are happening. And you have to remember that now we're in this age where, yes, this is a global marketplace, and unless in the US, this is a spicy take. I don't know if you're ready for it. This is
Hit me. I've got my pen.
You're ready for the spicy take. Okay.
Spicy.
If US OEs, US automotive maker, they are not getting the 30K EV correct, then we're just going to be like doing pickup trucks in the US.
This worries me.
It worries me
because I have a feeling
it should worry everyone, right?
Well, listen, I just got back from Europe. I did a couple of talks out there. There are somebody needs to fact check this, but there are over 30 Chinese EV makers already in the European market.
Yes.
And I sat in one, I believe it was called Link & Co. SUV, that I was certain was at least going to be 60 to 70,000 euros. And I stepped out of it and it was 29,995. The interior, the feeling, the and that genuinely scares me, because I think, while I love a good pickup truck, don't get me wrong, the implications on a $29,000 EV, even with US tariffs on it, it's still going to be a $40,000 EV that is jam-packed with features and luxury.
And the other thing, though, too, that we were talking about, it is, you can, if you don't want to make it over to the UK, just go to Mexico. Hello. South of the border. Go to Mexico. Drive the BYD Shark, the Seagull. Like, it's all there. And so, again, it sounds paranoia-ish. It's like very, not like conspiracy theory, but I like to take a global viewpoint on EV, because look, the US is not the only country in the world that is in this EV race. In fact, China is like kicking butt and taking names when it comes to EVs. So it's like, whenever I'm talking about electric vehicles, I feel like it's pertinent to have a global viewpoint on this. We can't just like hide our head in the sand and just say like, oh, well, the Mach-E did really well and that's cool.
Doesn't that seem, though, like if politicians wanted mass EV adoption, wouldn't that just be the way to do it? Let all the Chinese automakers into the market, make them super affordable, and now we're all EV.
And then, you know what, though? This is what we talked about. The homeland security threat. So there was news that literally just hit. It was on January 9th. I don't know when this episode is going to air. Outgoing Biden administration said that by 2029, all of the hardware, software cannot have any components from China, which means supply chains from Tesla, supply chains from GM, General Motors, people, they need to augment their supply chains, because guess what? They have components from China in there. And the fear is that the vehicle, this blows my mind, the vehicle could potentially become a weapon. I know.
I'm glad I used the word controversy in the beginning of this episode, because boy, oh boy, by the end of this, Elena, you and I are going to be like Woody Harrelson's character in that movie 2012, where we're just up in the mountains with ham radios, like people are going to be like, you crazies.
I know. We're so crazy right now. But this is okay. Go and Google it. There was an announcement. There was an announcement that just came out. I believe it was. Oh, you know where it was? It was in the SOTU pushback email as well.
That sounds like something we'd report.
back there. But anyway, so again, I know it sounds crazy because it's like I'm driving around. I don't see any BYD cars around here. What's the big deal? Why are people so concerned? And so there is that
Here it
element
is.
there.
Whitehouse.gov.
Yes.
Fact sheet. September 23rd, 2024.
Was
Fact
the
sheet.
first, yeah.
Protecting America from connected vehicle technology from countries of concern. You guys go check it. We'll link to it in the show notes. It's on whitehouse.gov. Oh my goodness.
I told you. It's freaking sorry, I can't curse.
Well,
on
you
the
know,
show,
like, here's the thing.
It's crazy.
I've talked about this on past episodes. I think, okay, Steve Jobs shows up on the scene. He goes, hey, see this? Now you can put 4,200 phones in your pocket. And everyone goes, yay. What he was really saying is, hey, investors, listen up. I just figured out a way to track everyone's movement everywhere they go, and I'm going to give it to them in a bundle that makes it feel like I've just enriched their lives. And then just a few short years later, they're like, and guess what? You can interface it with your vehicle. And then just a few short years after that, all the insurance companies want me to download their apps so they can see how I drive and learn. And now they know how often I go to Kroger. They know how little I visit my in-laws. They know so many things about my behavior, all stemming from this device. And then what I love when people go on Facebook and they're like, oh my goodness, guys, my phone is totally listening to me. You're like, you think?
Yeah, it's definitely listening to you. And then also, just to like go back to the China conversation. So what the other thing that I learned was that China was trying to get around this because they were in anticipation of the September announcement. They're saying, oh, we're just going to ship these hardware components to US friendly countries, like ship it through I don't know what the exact country is, but ship through US friendly countries.
We'll send them to Taiwan. You're like, you could have gone a little further than that.
And then exactly, and then those pieces of hardware are now in the vehicle. Yeah, so it's listen.
We're not doing a great job selling EVs right now, by the way. We are.
No, I know. I know. But I think, but here's the other thing too, as people are like, asking me, you drive an EV? Yes, I drive an EV. I drive a Chevy Bolt. You think that by 2030, we're going to be, 70% EV? I don't know. Maybe not. It's just, I like to take a realistic, holistic, global view of the thing because there are so many moving pieces. Back to the thing where I'd said you've got utility and automaker.
Yeah.
But now you have a geopolitical component.
Hey, does your marketing agency suck? Listen, before we hop back into this episode, I know you know me as the host of the Dealer Playbook, but did you also know that I'm the CEO of Flex Dealer, an agency that's helping dealers capture better quality leads from local SEO and hyper-targeted ads that convert? So if you want to sell more cars and finally have a partner that's in it with you that doesn't suck, visit flexdealer.com. Let's hop back into this episode. And kind of a scary one, if I may say.
I didn't think that this episode was going to take this turn, but it absolutely did. So, but I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it because I think it's definitely something. Look, like automakers have their eye on this. They are, we got the consulting people are on it. I don't know if that makes you feel warm and fuzzy or not, but we know that we need to be competitive. It all comes back to having a competitive product. I'm a geriatric millennial. I like good product. I like good service. Let's get back to the basics. Can we get an affordable EV where we don't need tax credits up the wazoo to make it affordable? I'm actually speaking at NADA about this topic of reaching a younger demographic with strategies that you can use to actually appeal to a younger buyer, because guess what, we are running out of boomers, guys. Like,
right.
I'm sorry, you need to be thinking about what that younger buyer wants. So anyway, there's my 2 cents on that.
I consider kind of the implications of this, and it's probably because I just finished watching the first season of Landman on Paramount, not sponsored.
Okay, I didn't watch it. Okay.
It's all about the oil industry right here in Texas, and there are elements that I can see are somewhat propaganda-ish in that they're like, and who do you think makes that? And what product do you think makes that thing? And how about every component that surrounds that electric vehicle that you're so proud of? What do you think is the main, and the tires and the asphalt and the windmills and the this and the, but I think about, are we going to see, for lack of better terms, are we going to see wars between the industries now in which electrification is coming? We cannot stop it. But the narrative, we're long past this, like, oh, it's green, it's good for the environment. It's like, remember that was the first propaganda piece, right? That's gone.
Yeah.
Are we going to see like this battle between ICE and electric? And then I think Toyota, I drive a Toyota, and pretty much every Toyota is going to be at least a hybrid in the coming, months, if, and years. So like, where are things, what's the point what's the summit that we're all going to arrive at, do you think?
If I knew the answer to that, I would be a gajillionaire. And I would be a gajillionaire.
Fair.
I would. We are all grappling with this question again, which is, I go back to my thesis of why this is such an interesting time to be in automotive. You think about all of the things that, even just in the short, 20 minutes that we've been talking here, how many different parts of our lives did we touch? Probably about 6. And
right.
So it's just so complex. I don't know what the answer is. And I think if we want to pull it back into the role of the dealer and the role of retail, again, it goes to the education piece, which we've been beating that dead horse for a while. Sorry. Okay. But there's also a layer of, have you ever driven an EV? Have you ever experienced for yourself like the instant acceleration? And have you charged your EV at home? Have you charged it publicly? What was that experience like? So we need this open dialogue at that point of sale, making sure that is absolutely happening. And again, that's why I love what Bob from Infinity was saying on your show. And I think that is just such a good way to think about selling EVs. And then, of course, we didn't even talk about remarketing. We didn't even talk about the used EV. Like, that's a whole other
There's a lot of fear around that, but I think it gets washed away in half of a generation. Like, I was thinking about, what's his name? Tucker Carlson. Does an expose, basically gives a Cybertruck to a farmer up in upstate New York. And they say, hey, drive this. And you could tell early on in the segment that Tucker really wanted to show, hey, this will not outperform and could not replace my beat up 1978 Chevy, whatever. And so they drop off this Cybertruck to this guy who has his own sawmill on his property, who's pretty much self-reliant. They show up after a week. And the first question Tucker says, so could this replace your work truck? And the guy goes, in a heartbeat.
Dang.
Like, in a heartbeat. And like, they were kind of like, thanks for joining us on this episode. Like they didn't really know where to go from there. And I think that ties into your thought process here of like, well, what's the longevity of these things? What's the used market going to look like? Is it a reliable buy? Can it, like, there's just so many exciting questions about this. And I share your sentiment. I can really feel it shine through, which is like, guys, we get to be the generation that experiences something in this world for the very first time together.
Yes.
We didn't get to experience the hot air balloon for the first time. We didn't get to experience the chariot turning into a horse and buggy for the first time. We didn't get to experience sliced bread. I mean, there's probably some still lingering out there that did, or color TV, or like, or. But this thing, which is a major shift of the planet on its axis, we get to be the ones to ask and figure out all of the answers to these questions.
Exactly. And the most important part of it is going to be the collaboration, is to have conversations. Again, this is why I put my podcaster hat on real quick.
Yep.
This is why it's so important to do what you're doing, Michael, and to keep these conversations alive, because there are so many silos. Like I go back to my experience working at Lyft, and you've got the silo for the implementation. You got the silo for, oh, you know about auto dealers. Okay, you're gonna go and like figure out how to sell to auto dealers. Okay, and and on the silos go. But now you want to think of, in an even massive, like global scale, of all of these silos, governments, utilities. So what is the key to collaboration, to having these conversations? I think a sense of humor is pertinent. I think a sense of humor is a way to break through some of this animosity, right? Never before have we had a motor vehicle which incites rage, like pure rage in people.
I mean, the Pontiac Aztec was close. That thing enraged me.
Did it enrage you? I'm sorry.
And then Breaking Bad made it cool.
Right.
How dare they?
Look, that was a really good spin that they could. So again, I don't have all the answers. I wish I did. I'm just humbly trying to bring people to the microphone, as you do, Michael, and bring these conversations forth, because look, I don't want to live in a world where the US isn't a major automotive force to be reckoned with. I don't want to live in that world. Just saying.
I want to touch on something, if you've just got a few more minutes here.
Yeah.
Going back to your basis of fact, that's what I wrote down.
Yeah.
4.2 million units in operation. 78% of EV owners will replace with another EV. The reality is, whether we feel animosity or rage or not, what we've learned, what we have enough data around, is that people of their own free will and testament are choosing to purchase these vehicles. Whatever the reason might be, whatever their motivator might be, the same could be said of all of our ICE vehicles, whatever the motivator was, So shifting it, you've brought up Bob's episode, Bob Welby, about the hospitality side of this. So for those listening where they're like, this is actionable, what's your recommendation to them from the perspective of like, okay, maybe we don't know all the answers or the implications, but we do have some answers.
Yeah.
What do we recommend for retail dealers that are, now have, I guess, regulation to sell these things?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things that come to mind. So, subscription. I know subscription is like a dirty S word. Subscription is not sexy, but I do want to say that there is technology that can enable a dealer to do this easily. It's a way to get someone who potentially doesn't have a down payment, potentially, and we're talking about maybe even is potentially subprime, get them into an EV, see how it meshes with their lifestyle, do payments accordingly. Again, we're in 2025, folks. There is tech to enable just about anything. And if you're listening to this and you didn't go to NADA to see all the cool tech, shame on you. But there is tech out there that will enable you to do this. That's number one. The second is I always like to highlight dealers who are doing a good job of this. That would be Michael Wood from Checkered Flag, JLR. He is just a trailblazer in his own right. He's been on the show quite a lot on EVs for Everyone. And it was just a simple thing, which was having more EVs in the loaner fleet, having people take the EV overnight, either free of charge, see how you like it. Again, it's like living with this thing, making it less scary, less of, oh my gosh, this is going to be such a different lifestyle. Right. So kudos to Michael and his team for doing that. I also have to give a shout out to Greg Ciccotelli, Philly guy, Philly, go Birds. And Ciccotelli and what they do at their stores is also like really, really, like, it doesn't take a lot of, people or frontline staff to do it. It's like, take one home, see if you like it. It's like, and so I'm like, Greg, why is this so revolutionary? Like, why are people not? So again, there are forward-thinking dealers out there who realize that this is not going to be a pure like digital play. Like, okay, we can have the argument where, oh, but wait, you have to order your Tesla online and this and that, and it's like a pure digital experience, front to end. But I think in this situation, especially when we're trying to get into early majority, more of the mainstream, you need to have more of a white glove, more of a hospitality viewpoint here. We're not in this early adopter, I'm so excited to have all this technology. No, that's done. That was 2000. That was like 2020.
Right. So long ago.
It's so long ago, 5 years ago.
You said be forward thinking. And I had to write this note as a sub point to that. For those that are listening or wondering, like, but do I have it in me? Am I the forward thinker? This is what the opportunity looks like to become a forward thinker if you don't identify as one currently. Because I wrote, name one time in history when backward thinking worked.
Touche.
Like, so if you're not forward thinking, what are you? Because if you're sitting still thinking, then you're backward thinking, is the way I think of it. I love what you're doing and bringing this conversation to the forefront, something that is truly exciting that we need to think about, that is innovative, that is a whole change of civilization in the making right before our eyes, that is presenting massive opportunities. I love that you bring up Michael and Greg Ciccotelli and that there are forward-thinking dealers out there. If we are to look back to history, the one thing we've learned is that it's always the forward thinkers who have just stood the test of time. How can those listening, watching to the playbook get in touch with you and connect with you?
Absolutely. No, I would be thrilled to have your gang reach out and connect with me. LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn way too much. So EVs for Everyone is on LinkedIn. Reach out to me directly. You can also send me an email, just Elena at evsforeveryone.com. Send me an email there. Happy to connect and share ideas. I don't know when is this going to air before NADA?
The Thursday of NADA. So you're going to be walking the floor and this thing is going to be in people's earbuds.
Okay, well, hopefully if it's Thursday, that's the workshop day at 2:30 Central. If you can listen to this before 2:30 Central, you can come to the workshop. We've got CEO of Farron Group, which is the number one car subscription company in Germany. Remember, we were talking about global. We've got Daniel flying over from Germany. He's got to make a connection in New York City to fly to New Orleans. Don't disappoint Daniel. You've got Savannah Sims is going to be on the panel. Sims Auto Group, Freddie Media, John Pasamato, Drive It Away, car subscription. Like, it's going to be amazing.
Awesome. I can't wait to see you in person in just a few short days at NADA. Elena Ciccotelli. Ciccotelli, thanks so much for joining me on the Dealer Playbook Podcast.
Thanks, Michael.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Dealer Playbook Podcast. If you enjoyed tuning in, please subscribe, share, and hit that like button. You can also join us and the DPB community on social media. Check back next week for a new Dealer Playbook episode. Thanks so much for joining.